So we can begin our program, and it's really my pleasure and distinct honor to introduce you our first keynote speaker for today, Carrie Robison. Carrie is the Deputy Commissioner for Sponsor Programs, Louisiana Board of Regents, and her title talk today is Louisiana's Commitment to Biomedical Research and Training. As some of you may know, the Board of Regents, the Louisiana Board of Regents, is a partner to the Louisiana Biomedical Research Network. They provide funding that increases the number of summer stipends that we have for undergraduate students. So we all know the very unique IMBRI programs across the 24 IMBRI programs in the IDEA network that we are supported by the State Board of Regents. And Carrie has been a friend and colleague and has worked with us for over many years in various positions that I held. And I'm very aware of your fervor to support higher education research throughout the state of Louisiana on multiple programs that the sponsored program division, the Board of Regents, is actually sponsoring. But without further ado, you have her entire short bio on page 4 here. I'm not going to elaborate on her specific education, other partners, and hope to save some time as we move forward. So please welcome Ms. Robison.
I am absolutely delighted that Dr. Krasoulis has invited me to speak with you all today a little bit on behalf of Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid, our Commissioner of Higher Education for the state of Louisiana, about the board's enthusiastic support for and our concrete investments in biomedical research efforts across the state. First, on behalf of the board, I want to thank all of you, particularly in light of the last couple of years that we've all lived through. I want to thank all of you for your dedication, for your hard work, and especially your contributions to our knowledge, our understanding, and our ability to serve our communities in the way that they need to be served. It's so important to us. It was important before the pandemic, but we're even more aware now. And if the pandemic taught us anything, it taught us that the work that you all undertake is life-sustaining and invaluable to us. So thank you. But with that said, I want to point out that despite the centrality of research efforts to higher education's purpose in the United States, research often occupies what I would call something of a liminal space in statewide higher education administration. We don't actually talk very much about it. We talk primarily about the education part of the post-secondary mission, getting students into our institutions, getting them through, and getting them out into the workforce. In fact, the constitutional amendment that created the Board of Regents in 1974 doesn't mention research at all. And much of our day-to-day focus is on the students. But our board has a very long history of recognizing and supporting, not just with our words, but with our dollars, university-based research. We have focused extensively in our investments on the biomedical field. In particular, research has been part of the statewide mission of the board almost from its beginnings. And I do want to point out what I think is more important, but that may be because this is my area of work in the Board of Regents. In the 1980s, the board, or the Louisiana, including both its political leaders and its citizens, did something quite visionary for research in Louisiana. They created what we call the Board of Regents Support Fund, which created a mechanism for statewide support of university research missions. And it helps to seed, grow, and sustain programs like LBRN, as well as individual faculty and campus programs throughout the state outside of the political process. We use this fund to run competitive grants programs and other funding opportunities for campuses that have been instrumental over the last 35 years in supporting the research missions that you all participate in. I do want to start, though, with a little bit of context about the Board of Regents, because the Board of Regents is sort of poorly understood in its position in the higher ed infrastructure in Louisiana. The board was established in the Louisiana Constitution in 1974. It's part of 3 layers of higher ed administration in Louisiana. The Board of Regents is what's called a coordinating board. That means that we coordinate and bring a statewide vision to all of the campuses and systems that operate in Louisiana. The Board of Regents works in collaboration to do that with the 4 management boards of the 4 public systems in Louisiana. That is the LSU system, the UL system, the University of Louisiana system, the Louisiana Community and Technical College system, and the Southern University system, which I would note is the only public HBCU system in the country. Those management boards are charged with management and oversight of more than 35 member campuses across the state, including degree granting institutions and special purpose campuses. The board's chief responsibilities in this framework are things like writing and maintaining a master plan for higher education for the state, academic programming coordination, budget coordination, including formula funding, which is required by law, statewide policies, and higher education advocacy. You'll note that I did not say research, because that is not amongst our charges as set forth in the Constitution. But what the board does do, we set a statewide vision and direction for higher ed. We don't set individual priorities or strategic directions for the campuses that populate higher ed in Louisiana, but we set that big statewide vision. Sometimes the board acts as an arbiter, such as approving new academic programs, admission standards, and so forth. And sometimes the board can confer status. If any of you work at a center of excellence that has been named as such by the Board of Regents, that's one of the ways in which the board tries to convey priorities and confer status, particularly on research efforts. All this, I know, sounds very bureaucratic, very boring. But the board's position outside the system and campus structure is actually important, because it allows our agency to do 2 things that are critical in supporting research. First, build collaboration and consensus. It is my hope that this group represents a broad spectrum of campuses and research units across the state. That is made possible in part by the board sitting outside the campus and system structure. And the board also has a charge and can very well advocate with different groups for Louisiana higher education as a whole enterprise. We don't advocate for Louisiana higher education in its particulars, this campus, this system, this region, that region. We advocate from a broad statewide perspective. So with all that said, that is what we do. Again, you haven't heard the word research a whole lot, but our commitment to research is real, tangible, and manifested through several parallel activities. So this critical portion of the Board of Regents mandate, we include research in master planning. We have to undertake master planning every 5 years in this state, and research has been included for the last 20 years as part of what we conceive as the mission of higher education and the goals that we set for our institutions to meet. The commitment undergirds several of our recent successes. For example, in 2022, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette received R1 status, or was conferred with R1 status in Carnegie classifications. Southern University A&M College, right here in Baton Rouge, was conferred with R2 status. So the commitment to research has produced a number of research institutions in the state operating at a very high level. We're also among the elite of EPSCoR states across the country. As you know, EPSCoR jurisdictions actually are the majority of states in the union at this point. And Louisiana is one of the very few, in fact, one of the only states that has an unbroken string of Track 1 funding through NSF EPSCoR. We have supported LBRN for years and years in an unbroken string of funding for LBRN, and we're very proud of that record. Our current master plan focus at the Board of Regents in terms of research is harnessing the power of research universities to contribute not to just general knowledge, but to the quality of life in the places that these institutions exist. So that is very much connected with your mission. And the master plan, in fact, specifically calls out biomedical sciences as an area in which we need to invest to ensure that we're serving our populations in the way that they deserve to be served. It's important to recognize, though, this is included in a plan, but it's not just words. We have woven this priority into Board of Regents actions. First, research is a component in our funding formula. The legislature instructs the Board of Regents to set aside a certain amount of funding every year for performance-based support for institutions. So we look at your accomplishments in terms of designating how much money you receive. And research is very much one of the components that is looked at in terms of determining formula funding allocations. So that's real dollars. We have long-term support and advocacy for major initiatives, including Louisiana EPSCoR, LBRN. We have supported the LCATS initiative that is managed through Pennington Biomedical Research Center. We are supporting the recently and quickly evolving NCI designation efforts going around statewide. We have supported core laboratories, new facilities, and provided all manner of support to your programs, direct and indirect. In terms of the pandemic era, we set obviously biomedical research and healthcare as a high priority, and we made several investments to health-related research and innovation, support for clinical trials, drug development, medical advances, and micromanufacturing. And the governor allocated federally provided GEAR dollars and other funding specifically to the pandemic response, including the research aspect of the pandemic response. But the board's most significant and longest lasting commitment to research is our unique and very forward-looking Board of Regents Support Fund. The Support Fund was established in 1987 with proceeds from an oil and gas settlement. Those proceeds were put in a trust fund. That trust fund is maintained in perpetuity. And the Board of Regents receives the proceeds, a portion of the proceeds every year. We can use those monies for four things per the Constitution: endowment of chairs for eminent scholars, recruitment of superior graduate students, targeted research and development efforts, and the enhancement of academic, research, and agricultural departments and units. You'll note, listening to this list, that what we are charged to support are the academic, research, and agricultural missions of the institutions. We don't do student support. We don't do ancillary services. We are solely focused on the academic and research missions of our institutions. Since its inception in 1987, the Support Fund has spent almost $1 billion supporting our institutions of higher education. That averages about $25 million a year. Though if you are familiar with the Support Fund, you might recognize that that's just a little bit lower than we have received in previous years. All of our funding is aligned with campus system and state priorities. Our grant funding is unique in the country as far as we can tell, not because other states don't provide grant funding for research and other activities, but because this is a long-term sustained commitment. We provide these funds year over year, every year. We run competitions every year for 35 years of annual funding. 20% of all the monies that we've provided are in direct support of research programs through grants. We have provided significantly more funding via other non-research specific grant programs, including things like the enhancement program, which generally provides equipment and other enhancements to departments and units, our grad student fellowships and scholarships, and particularly our endowment matching programs, which pair a private sector contribution with a state match to establish endowments in support of students and faculty members. We have also provided federal matching. We are the match for almost any statewide style federal program or federal grant that is in need of a match. That is, again, almost unique to Louisiana. That is not contingent on the legislative process. It is not going to the politicians and asking them for money. It is funds that we have and that we make available for that purpose regularly and on a sustained basis. We also do some special programs. We've done hurricane recovery programs, pandemic programs, based on individual needs, unique circumstances in Louisiana. While the Support Fund does not exclusively serve biomedical research or set aside funds specifically for biomedical research, this field has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of our support, given the strength of the research expertise around Louisiana and the impact of this field in our state and beyond. Just a quick back of the envelope calculation. When I was preparing for this, I had a look across our years of funding and quickly calculated about 35% of all of the funds that we have expended in the support fund have gone directly or indirectly into biomedical research and associated fields. We have, for example, provided over $100 million plus endowed chairs in biomedical fields. We have created over 400 endowed professorships in biomedical fields, a significant number of graduate scholarships, approximately a third of all research funds that we've distributed, so about $60 to $65 million in direct support of biomedical research, infrastructure investments amounting to the tens of millions, including the core facility rebuilds that happened after Hurricane Katrina at the medical centers in New Orleans, and our federal matching programs, including to LBRN. The board has shown its commitment over decades now to university-based research across many areas of importance through its advocacy policies and priorities, and also through nearly $1 billion in investment from the support fund. I would encourage all of you, if you don't know about our support fund programs, or even if you do know about our support fund programs, have a look at our programs. I encourage you to reach out to us, talk through your ideas, and use our resources to build your research profiles and to build the research profile of the state. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Also, to answer any questions we have relating to the Board of Regents
Happy
programs. I wanted to ask you, Carrie, you mentioned potential support towards the NCI designation effort that's happening there.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that, or how?
All I can say at this point is that the governor's executive budget is in the process, is in the development process, and that is certainly something that we've had our eye on in terms of additional support for higher education, is supporting the National Cancer Institute designation. So keep an eye on the governor's executive budget for more information.
Yeah. And we have great hopes, because obviously the state of Louisiana has a surplus this year and the next year. Hopefully some of those funding will be invested into higher education, including the NCI efforts, I suspect.
Yes, absolutely. And the current gubernatorial administration has been a friend of not only higher education writ large, but particularly of our medical programs and our programs around the health and prosperity of our state.
Yes.
I have one question about Dr. O. New idea. I found that because we have like year-based, I think that like sometime November deadline, especially for the new ideas, that to kind of year-round, so in some case, you have to wait 1 year for the next.
Yeah, Carrie, can you repeat the question?
Right, absolutely. What's being asked is about the discipline or the competition cycle for our competitive programs. And I would assume this is both for Board of Regents Support Fund and the EPSCoR competitive programs that are run through Louisiana EPSCoR, and whether there could be a more rapid response style approach taken, because we run on an annual cycle. We release RFPs as early as we can in the summer, usually around July 1st. We have our deadlines in the fall, and then the results of the competitions are announced around the 1st of April every year. So is it possible to do a more rapid response so that people who have an idea to pursue in December aren't waiting until the next cycle? And unfortunately, the nature of our funding is that we collect money throughout the year from the trust fund investments, and we spend it in a rush in April, which puts us on our annual cycle. We don't have access to those funds until April, so we have to run on an annual cycle. The EPSCoR program opportunities, some of them have open deadlines and are more available on a rapid response basis. But in terms of the support fund programs, unfortunately, we're locked into the annual cycle.
I wanted to also ask you, Carrie, and that's a long-standing question, and I think we'll probably have discussed this at some point in past lives, but one of the important things that higher education could contribute to the state of Louisiana is economic development.
Mhm.
And, the Board of Regents sponsor programs has the industrial ties program that really focuses on that. But my understanding over the years, and I've been a recipient of some of those grants, was that typically you need a partner, which may not necessarily be in the state of Louisiana, and most likely it creates problems. Actually, it's in the state of Louisiana. So the question is, how is that program could evolve to really promote entrepreneurship in the state of Louisiana?
Right. One of the ways that we've evolved that program that's available now is by introduction of the POCP, or proof of concept and prototyping initiative within the ITRS program, which is Industrial Ties Research Subprogram. And what that does is it does not require an industry partnership, but what it does require is that you have that your research is producing a product or a service that is near to the market, that you will have available to the market, and you can get those funds for prototyping, for business plans, and those kinds of activities. And it does not require you to have a partner. The other thing that we've done to accommodate the difficulty in finding industry partners in Louisiana, it can be a challenge, is to allow partnership with non-industry partners, government agencies, and so forth. And that's really a matter of arguing that this is the appropriate avenue to take to accomplish the goals of the ITRS, which is to develop and diversify economic development in Louisiana, but without the private sector involvement that we're looking for.
So if I may try to clarify this, so potential collaborations between an institution and a nonprofit, whether it would be a hospital, that would be kosher, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's something that's kind of new that people need to be aware of, that the industrial ties program of the Board of Regents would accommodate, that possibility.
It would, and it has. We have had successful projects that are partnering with hospitals as well as state agencies. If you're doing work with, say, LDH, that is an eligible partner, provided you can make the case that that's the appropriate partner.
Anybody else from the PUIs have any questions relating to the Board of Regents sponsor programs? Okay, Carrie will be around here for a while, I hope, and then maybe during the break we have any other questions you could approach her. Thank you very much, Carrie.
Thank you so much.